The Merry Pranksters, Chapter 2, Episode 1. Hank breaks a stale silence by exhaling a wisping F sound, and when I glance over at him, notice the glow of the caddy's control panel highlighting neon specks of fresh blood splattered across his face. There is something unsettling about the ultraviolet expressionism sprayed across his cheek. It drips down to his lips like a gruesome crime scene photo that triggers an instinct to wipe my own face. When I silently motion over to him that he's got a little something there, he thanked me, believing I was concerned for his well-being and not just the caddy's leather upholstery. Hank believes that Nordic aliens live inside the core of the flat Earth. Every time he gets to talking about the firmament, my eyes involuntarily gloss over. But one thing that Hank Pickens does not believe in is fairy tales. While I may have my own complicated relationship with reality, the truth is neither do I. So while we don't have much faith that cops follow any strict boundaries of jurisdiction, even if they are chasing a murder suspect, once we've crossed several county lines, I exhale a tepid sigh of relief. As the last of the gypsy's warning of repentance seeps deeper into the recesses of my long-term memory, I feel the need to draw attention to something that should otherwise go unsaid. Sitting up straight, I clear my throat. Hank, I say, searching for a way to move forward assertively, but with tact. You don't have to tell me what happened back there or anything, and I'm not, trying to nag or whatever, but I'm just going to remind you, again, that, you know I can't go to jail, right? As these words pass through my lips, I can't help but wonder how they would sound coming from one sane person to another sane person. I will absolutely get kicked out of school just for being arrested after that whole thing last year with Chad and the bowling pins. Don't be such a drama queen, Schultz. No one's going to jail, Hank says, glancing in the rearview mirror. His delivery is less convincing than I think we were both hoping for. Look, you wouldn't believe me even if I told you, but the less you know about what happened back there at Joey's, the better. All right, man, I say, almost ready to drop the whole thing. But then, as I'm watching the blue dot on the navigation panel aimlessly wander around the screen, I decide if I'm going to be lost, I should at least know why. I'm just saying, man. When I was pushing play on Tupac's Machiavelli, you were walking up to Joey's door and Demeen was sitting on the porch with a blunt and a 40. That whole place is swarming with crackheads. I thought the first gunshots were from some shitty Camaro that drove by and backfired. By the time you came strutting out with that guitar case, the CD was up to White Man's World. I could see Demeen through the window wearing a blood-stained apron and sharpening a goddamn butcher's knife. I'm looking at him. He knows I'm looking at him. Dude, right now in the back seat, there's a Gibson hard-shell guitar case full of cocaine. Someone's jagged upper incisors are curb-stomped into the side of it, and that's not your blood bukkakied all over your face. Now, I don't know if that's technically armed robbery, but I'm sure the punishment is prison. I flash an uneasy glance his way. You know that better than anyone. He knows what he wants to say, but he is struggling to find the right way to word it. Look, first of all, I didn't rob anyone. And though his next words are not, and I didn't kill anyone either, he offers a reasonable explanation. Betraying some sacred code of silence, he breaks down the hierarchy of the St. Louis dope game from the bottom to the top. The way Hank tells it, whatever pleasure Demeen may have gotten out of that whole bloody incident, it was mostly business. Demeen and Joey were once boys, but it's a dirty game where true friends can be hard to come by. I usually just dealt with Joey, but I was locked up with some of those flunkies who worked for you-know-who. Those cats talk a lot of shit. Shaking his head, he calls Joey Talcum X and guesses he simply got greedy and was in over his head. Lowering his gaze to look me in the eye, he says, Look, I don't know anything about fabled Irish drug lords, or whatever Slim Shady and Dre had going on back there. The only motherfucker I can say for sure that was not involved in that shit was me. Looking over at him suspiciously, I don't think he's lying, but I also don't believe him. I wish he would have offered a smile when I asked him if he didn't think it was a monumental coincidence that Demeen chose that moment to stage his coup. He just scoffed and told me not to dwell too much on the details. Slipping into some of his cryptic gin pop jargon, he tells me, "Well, Schultz, that's always been Joey's problem, hasn't it?" He takes a moment to rub his pecs. "Ever since we were kids, all he ever wanted to be was king of the jungle." After a while, he remembered something. He starts telling me that there was something odd about the way Demeen chain-smoked Newports, and how he used a pair of carpenter's shears to slowly cut up the right leg of Joey's pants. I think the word he was looking for was methodical. He spoke wistfully about standing in the entryway to the kitchen while Demeen knelt over Joey, sharpening the butcher's cleaver. He described in gruesome detail the sound of the blade becoming hypnotic after the third or fourth swipe, and the gritty ring the edge of the blade made sliding up and down the honing steel. He shivers when he admits he must have blacked out, because the sound the steel made when it hit the bone took him by surprise. He takes a minute before saying, "That was when Joey regained consciousness and started screaming." He lets a side chuckle escape. "I thought he was going to use that hammer to knock out his teeth like they did in the pen, but I was wrong about that. That is not what he used the hammer for." Shaking his head as if to say, "I guess that's just the way things go," Hank says nostalgically, "Joey just wanted to fit in somewhere, but he was too ghetto for his rich family and too rich for the ghetto." Rolling down the window to relieve some of the pressure, I'm thinking out loud. It's not something you can easily put your finger on because we all grew up together, but somehow it's not surprising at all how Joey could have spun such a tangled web of chaos. I guess he always had a way of believing that something was, while at the same time believing that it wasn't. Before long, he was willing to believe anything at all. I shrug, not because I agree or disagree, but because sometimes it's all you can do. I'm rolling up a dollar bill tightly to snort a loosely cut line off the Tupac CD case when he digs a gaudy skull ring out of his pocket and tosses it to me. It's heavy, and I hold it up to the light of the GPS screen. I read that it's 24-karat white gold with a dull, foggy gem resting in the eye socket. It's not the kind of accessory just anyone can pull off, and curiously, I ask him if it's supposed to be a lion's skull. Just as I'm about to toss it out the window, a smudge rubs off the eye and the gem begins to glow at me like hot kryptonite. The more I rub the lion's emerald eye, the stronger it glows. "King of the jungle, dude. That's what Joey always used to say," he tells me without looking over. His blood-stained face is navigating the road when I realize that rubbing the smooth metallic ring with my thumb seems to have a calming effect on my troubled mind. I ask, "Yo, Scarface, you sure you're not going to need this?" When he says no without laughing, I pocket the ring and pull out my Tic Tac container to empty out the last Xanny bar. Rolling up the window, I tell him, "Hey man, these people are fucking vampires." I'm shaking my head. Joey, these dope dealers, online haters, hell, even that hot reporter lady, they don't see people like us as human. We're just bodies for them to bleed dry. It's like that stripper you were fucking around with earlier. They all smile and shove their tits in your face one minute, but then turn around and feed on your corpse the next. Allowing one off-ramp after another to pass us by without exiting, I shrug my shoulders, this time out of weariness. I pull out the skull ring again and slide it on my finger to read the inscription on the side and wonder what memento mori means before returning it to the pocket of my jeans. Hank looks like he just remembered something else and turns down the radio. Lifting his foot from off the accelerator, he actually sounds sober when he tells me, "Schultz, we cannot tell anyone about that shit that happened back there." Pause. "Especially not fucking Gonzo."